figuring out the actual historical return of the market is not as easy as just averaging all the previous year's returns. So when you hear people like
11.81%, which is real close to 12, stupid people,
and this 12% per year is what you should expect in the market, tell you that it's averaged more than 12% per year, well, that's not the full story behind what you should expect. I'll walk you through the numbers to help you have a better idea of what you might be able to actually expect from the market. Coming up. Hey there. My name is Steven Spicer, and it's my goal to help you invest smarter. And there are a lot of financial misconceptions and outright myths out there that I'm committed to tearing down and making the reality as understandable as possible. The research behind that understanding and finding better solutions is where I've spent most of my time over the last half decade. So that's the type of value and knowledge that I'll be sharing here on this channel. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And it's the primary theme of the book that I'm currently writing. You can find out all about that along with additional value in our private community. So check it out. Now, in our last video, we talked about why we lean on the S&P 500 for historical insights as opposed to any other index. And we discovered that the simple average return of the market since 1926 through the end of 2019 has been 12.1% per year. Most advisors and pundits will use this 12% figure as an afterthought plug to help their client or potential client feel as though they're being conservative with their projections for the client's hard-earned dollars. A desirable trait in an advisor. There's one financial personality, however, who defends his 12% plus claims more vehemently than any other that I've seen. On his blog, in an article entitled The 12% Reality, and you can find plenty of videos here on YouTube with him talking about this as well, Dave Ramsey cites similar S&P 500 historical data as evidence for his readers and concludes, "So you can see, 12% is not a magic number. Based on the history of the market, it's a reasonable expectation for your long-term investments." This is the expectation Ramsey is setting for the millions who diligently heed his investment advice. 12% is a reasonable expectation for your long-term investments. I should add that he is by no means the only one doing this. He just so happens to be the loudest.
Shut up. Seriously.
Now, if you discovered that the average annualized return was different than what you would actually realize, about which would you care more? The average or the actual? The actual, right? In fact, wouldn't that be the only one that you really cared about? If the average is meaningless to where your account will actually be in the future, why bother? In the world of investments, there is a difference. And in the world of stocks, specifically, that difference can be substantial. To understand this variance, one has to look no further than the source that Ramsey himself cites in that post. Before you can even get to the calculator that Dave's team used to prove his 12% reality claim, right there at the top of the page, you find this warning. A problem with talking about average investment returns is that there is real ambiguity about what people mean by average. For example, if you had an investment that went up by 100% one year and then came down 50% the next, you certainly wouldn't say that it had an average return of 25%. At least I hope not. Which would be 100% minus 50% divided by 2. Because your principal is back where you started. Your real annualized gain is 0. In this example, the 25% is the simple average or arithmetic mean. The 0% that you really got is the geometric mean, also called the annualized return or CAGR for compound annual growth rate. Volatile investments are frequently stated in terms of the simple average rather than the CAGR that you actually get. Bad news. The CAGR is smaller. The CAGR is always smaller. Unless an investment has the exact same return year in and year out, your actual realized gain will always be smaller than the simple average. Consider the returns over 10 years of the following two investment portfolios. Which would you rather have? Portfolio 1 outperforms Portfolio 2 in 7 out of 10 years. It only has 3 negative years. Its best year is up 30%, while its worst year is only down half that, 15%. Portfolio 2, on the other hand, only has a 6% return every single year. A simple value calculation reveals that both portfolios have an average annual return of 6%. Yet the dollar amount found in each of these portfolios at the end of this 10-year period is different. If you invested $1,000 in Portfolio 1, you would have made just under $1,700. The same investment in Portfolio 2 would have yielded almost $1,800. That's 10% of your original value less between two accounts with the same average annual return. The actual realized return of Portfolio 1, the geometric mean, was 5.38%. Portfolio 2's, of course, was 6%. That small 0.62% difference on a $1,000 initial contribution over just 10 years generated a slightly more than $100 difference between the two portfolios. When you consider the amplified impact of negative returns, it isn't hard to see why Portfolio 1 underperformed in the end. The damage done by losing periods far outweigh comparable positive returns. Consider the fact that a 50% loss is much more impactful than a 50% gain. Say you have $1,000. If your account goes up by 50%, you now have $1,500. However, it would only require a 33% loss to erase that $500 that you just gained. A 50% gain is counteracted by a mere 33% loss. If instead you started with a 50% loss, your $1,000 would decline to $500. It would now require a 100% gain to earn back that $500 you just lost. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain to reverse its damage. It gets worse. The impact is exponential. The bigger the initial loss, the greater the gain required to make it back. For example, while a 10% loss would only require an 11% gain to offset it, a 90% loss, say $1,000 dropping all the way to $100, requires a 900% gain to recoup your principal. This chart gives you a breakdown of various gains that would be required to recoup your principal after various losses. Now, the track record of the S&P 500 provides us with 94 years worth of data points to aggregate. And there are some doozies in here that really drag on the historical geometric mean, like 1937's negative 35% return, 2008's negative 37% return, and 1931's negative 43% return. The CAGR for the S&P 500 from 1926 through 2019 is 10.2%. Although this 1.9% difference may not sound like a big deal at first, it makes a meaningful difference on a long time horizon. Assuming that 12.1% annual return, $100 invested in the S&P 500 index in 1926 would be worth $4.6 million today. At the actual return of 10.2%, however, that same $100 investment would be worth less than $1 million, only 20% of what you would have projected, all from a mere 1.9% difference in the annual return assumptions. Of course, most people don't have a 94-year time horizon for which they're trying to plan. The difference is still consequential. Your actual portfolio value would be 84% of its projected value after 10 years, 71% of its projected value after 20 years, and only 60% of its projected value after 30 years. That means that even if everything goes according to plan, i.e. the market actually does continue to perform as it has in the past, spoiler alert, future videos will have you questioning that, your $10,000 investment after 30 years has only grown to $184,000, while you were originally projecting and planning for, maybe even counting on, $308,000. Clearly, every percentage point has a meaningful impact when planning long term. So yeah, don't base any of your plans on the expectation of making a 12% annual rate of return. At least not in the stock market.
Shut up. Seriously. You're the problem with the business.
And I hate to break it to you, but even this 10.2% figure is still far too high for you to use for any realistic planning forecasts. In the next video, we'll explore some additional factors you should be aware of when planning your financial future. So don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell. And if you're sincerely interested in understanding some of the problems I've discovered with the financial industry, you should check out our new community. I'm planning to release some rough draft chapters of my book here pretty soon, and that'll be the place that I do it. So I hope to see you in there. Regardless, I wish you all the best. Take care.